Hello friends and patrons, and welcome to part 3 of my Everyone Can Draw series. This is brought to you by my passion project children's book I'm working on over at Patreon. You can visit it at patreon.com/OhNoHenry, Henry with an I. I will leave a link in the box below. The driving force behind this project is that I believe that everybody can learn how to draw. Drawing is a skill set, just like every other skill that can be learned. The problem being is that when you ask people, hey, how can I learn how to draw? They will just tell you to sketch and draw every day, but they don't tell you what to sketch or how to sketch. So if you've ever wanted to pick up a pencil or do some digital art or just grow your skill set, but you don't know where to start, this series is for you. In the first 2 parts, we focused on getting the basic proportions of an object and understanding symmetry and proportions by drawing rectangles and parallelograms and working from simple shapes into increasingly more complex shapes. Here I want to start working with tone. Tone is a very important factor in drawing and painting and in art. It is the continuum from pure white to pitch black. And being able to gauge the right tone for an object or form is critical to getting a good, solid understanding of what you're drawing. So this is part 1 of your exercise. You're going to draw a series of small blocks, and you're going to try and pick out the exact shades of what you're seeing in front of you. I am trying to get the right shades for that lemon, shadows and lights. Once you've done that, done this little shade map, if you want, of the object in front of you, we're going to go back to what we covered in part 1 and part 2. So we're going to draw a basic object, but I'm not going to get too involved in the form. I'm not drawing the lemon per se at this stage. I'm just breaking it down into its basic constituent parallelograms and rectangles. If it helps you to think of these as just pixels, do that. So remember what we're trying to do here. This whole series of videos is about developing the fundamental skills that you need for drawing and art and sculpture and painting and so on and so forth. In the first few, we covered just how to understand basic proportions and then basic shapes. What we're doing here is a similar thing. We're isolating and honing. One of the core fundamentals is tonal understanding, as being able to read the world around you and understand how light and dark certain things are. Now, you might think this is very easy. You look at something and go, oh, well, that's dark or that's light. But you'd be surprised how nuanced it actually is, how often it is influenced by the objects and lights around it. And so this process of just breaking it down into simple blocks that you color in allows you to identify and then gauge whether you've correctly assessed the tones in front of you. So we're removing the object in front of us. We're dealing with this very abstractly. But it has one very important additional benefit, is that in the process, you are learning how to be comfortable with your pencil and you are learning how to shade. So at this point, we're now going to move to the digital version, just so I can show you more clearly what the process is in the sketchbook. Now remember, these are all sketching exercises. These are things that you should be doing every day. Exercise 1 was just drawing boxes of a basic proportion of height and width. Exercise 2 was identifying simple geometric shapes that you could build up in your drawing. And here now is being able to identify your tones. So without cheating and using the eyedropper, so one of the things that you can do if you only work digitally is to have an image in front of you and see if you can match the exact tones to particular areas of the painting. This ability to correctly gauge tone is incredibly tricky, and some artists have managed to do it superbly. Myself, I still tend to go a bit too dark every now and then. I do like images with high contrast, and that's just the way it is. But at least part of this process is that you learn to identify your strengths and your weaknesses. So now I've incorporated the image of the lemon. I'm now going to turn it black and white, and I'm going to show you using the color picker just how close I was to certain shades or not. You can see that in this particular case, in the backdrop, I ended up going too light. My shadows was too light. My midtones seemed to be more or less spot on. My highlight, I went too light. So again, it goes back to that high contrast. And my high points are actually way too light. So that's one of the things that you pick up in this process, is just how uncalibrated your understanding of tones are. We have a tendency to imagine pure white where there's actually very little pure white in nature, which is one of the reasons why I prefer to work from a mid-tone rather than a pure white page. So this is now to show you how to put all the process together and what I was doing in my sketchbook. This is not the way that I recommend you working. This is just to show you how it happens. So of course I start with my big blocks, my big shapes, my height and my width. And now I start selecting areas of particular tone. If you're like me and you sometimes have trouble identifying specific tones, I recommend that you blur your eyes. You tend to see the world in blobs. Or if you're one of these people that's got glasses, take off your glasses and you tend to see the world less focused, and allows you to pick up tones a bit clearer. So here you can see I'm just breaking it down now, as I did at the beginning of the video in exercise 2, of just identifying my areas of tones and color. Of course, here I am cheating. I am using the eyedropper and picking the colors directly from the source image. This isn't going to help you to learn how to draw. So it is important, it is imperative that you do this from real life, that you see an object in the real world in front of you and you try and figure out exactly what its shade is. This process, in conjunction with all the other tools that we covered so far, will give you a very powerful arsenal for some kick-ass drawings. I understand that this particular exercise and the other exercises I gave in part 1 and part 2 and the other exercise I will give in future parts seem to be very abstract, very esoteric and very far removed from just making a kick-ass drawing. The thing being is that what we're trying to do here, and what I found lacking in many of the online sources and many of my own teachings, is being able to understand the individual components. And in this process, what I've tried to do is find the core underpinning of any one fundamental. So this fundamental of tone, we remove from everything else. We remove from shape, from form, and everything else. And we're just working on tone. Previously, we just worked on proportions and so on and so forth. If you do this, you're slowly building up your toolbox of drawing skills. And as I mentioned earlier on this video, it also gives you a familiarity and a comfort with your tool. So I'm doing the same exercise here again, just showing you what I've done in my sketchbook, which is essentially start with my basic rectangles and then cutting away into the negative, using negative shape to cut away into the form, and then identifying basic shapes like ovals and triangles and squares and semicircles to fill out the form. I then fill each of those sections with a tone. Now, it doesn't have to be very detailed at this stage. If you can imagine that detail is actually nothing more but this process continued onwards to the nth degree. This gives us a basic grounding, and if you can get here already, then you're on your way to doing beautiful, wonderful drawings. Now, for professional practiced artists, for those of you who are experienced, or those of you who know some of the basics of drawings, these exercises are not wasted. I can tell you from my own experience from doing these, that just going through the process of retraining my eye and my brain to identify tones, to ignore everything else, or to just work on negative space, or just work on proportions, helps you focus and identify and develop a skill set that may be lacking or just may be rusty. You see, we have this overwhelming pressure in our sketchbooks when we are told, hey, you must sketch every day. To do beautiful rendered drawing, we're looking for that ooh and ah. What I'm telling you is that if you're drawing every day, to get better, don't show your sketchbook to anyone. Keep it secret, keep it safe, and just focus on training your eye and your brain. To bring it back to what I said at the beginning of the session, the idea of drawing every day should actually be a lot more focused. When you're going to gym, when you're practicing, you're not just throwing yourself up at everything. It helps to have a structure, a focus to isolate and hone on a particular muscle set, and it gets you stronger and better in that particular area. And that's what I intend to do with this Everyone Can Draw series. I didn't know it at the time. I was just putting some stuff together to draw some attention to my little silly project on Patreon. But I'm getting quite invested in these, and so far the response has been quite positive, so I hope that you enjoy too. If it tickles you, please continue to follow, support, and share. Come and follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/oh no Henry with an I. I'm going to leave the links below. Thank you very much, and please don't hesitate to share with me your sketches if you are beginning to follow this course, and just how show me how it's going. I'm very interested. I wish you all a great and fantastic art journey. See you soon.